Hello and welcome everybody to 5 factors to consider for a right fit school. My name is Erin Gevertz and I'm bringing you this conversation that I heard in an interview with some admissions directors from a range of boarding schools across the country at an event that I went to earlier in May. And the content was so good that I wanted to make something to share with all kinds of folks who are considering looking at private schools. So I hope you find this helpful. Like I said, my name is Erin Gevertz of Erin Gevertz Educational Consulting. I am a Bay Area native and I have 13 years of supporting families apply to middle and high school here in the Bay Area and across the country with boarding schools. That said, if you're looking at kindergarten or even potentially at college, some of this information might pertain to you. And my passion is for promoting educational access and justice opportunities for families. So here's a list of some schools I've placed kids into, and on here you'll see some day schools, you'll see some boarding schools, some public schools, charter schools. I truly believe that there's not one type of school that's best for folks, that it's really all about exploring what's out there, taking those options into serious consideration, and then applying to those schools that you feel might be a great match for you and your family and your child. So one of the first things that they mentioned, one of the first things that was mentioned, at this event that I went to was that something about, oftentimes I'll hear families say, I'm looking for the perfect fit. And we happen to live in an area with so many amazing schools that it's important to remember not to look necessarily for the perfect fit, because you'll change and grow. You, the child, will change and grow over your time at that school. So there's a lot of other factors that we're going to talk about today, but just to remember, there's not necessarily one specific right fit school. There might be a range of schools that would meet the needs of your family and child. So with that said, let's talk about what does fit mean. So fit means a couple of things, and on the next slide, I'm going to give you some specifics of what to look for. But first of all, it means figuring out what's important to you and your family. So obviously, the older your child is, if your child's looking at middle school or particularly at high school, they're going to have some opinions of what's important to them. If you're looking at kindergarten, you as the adult will have more opinions of what you think matters to you, but it's important that you write those things down, take note of those so that you are clear and you can start to, when you're doing your search. Then it's your time to do some research online. So schools, because of COVID, have put out extensive resources for families. There are videos, there's virtual tours of buildings. You can hear from students and families, and you'll hear from them online. And then when you start to visit schools and go to events, you'll be talking to people, you'll be asking your questions, you'll be engaging with the community and seeing how it feels for you and for your student on the campus. And that all, you're going to take all that information together and decide if you think it's a right match for you to apply. That said, as you're talking to people, it's important to remember that there are facts versus opinions and stereotypes. If you're talking to someone who went to a school 10 years ago, it's probably a different school now. There might be new leadership. They might have put a lot of different things in place. So it's important that you're talking to families, current families and staff and faculty at the school to hear about what's happening now and what the plans for the future are. And it's great that you're here now or whenever you're watching this video, because laying the groundwork starts now. So today is June 1st. If you start to do some research over the summer before you start to visit schools, it will make your life that much less stressful in the fall. So as promised, here are some factors to consider researching as you're moving along through. If you're looking at high schools, I definitely expect students and parents to be doing research. obviously for college too. But if you're thinking of, if you have a younger student, most of the adults are doing the research, but there's some things to think about, which could be general things like the size of the school. Is it co-ed? What's the diversity like? Where is it? Obviously, you're going to think about the academics at the school. What kinds of classes are offered? What's the learning style like? Are they doing a lot of projects? Is it more traditional instruction like when I went to school? What are the facilities like? How do they grade and assess students? As far as the feel of the school, schools have their mission statement. All schools will have a mission statement. And so it's important to see if that aligns with your family's values. Or does that even matter to you? Some families don't care. So that's something else to think about. And then also all the offerings. So, private schools want kids who are going to get involved in things, particularly in middle and high school, right? So not just go to school and go home, but are you going to try a sport? Are you going to do an art class? Are you going to be in a play? Like, how will you get involved? What looks interesting for you? And particularly as you get older, what kinds of leadership opportunities do you intend to hopefully take at the school and accomplish by the time that you graduate? The next point that they brought up in this conversation was this question: what are schools actually looking for, right? So as parents and guardians start to think about schools, is it competitive? Do my kid need a hook? Do I need a resume for a kindergarten application? What can I do to enhance the chances of candidacy? All these worrying thoughts start to swirl in your brain. And I'm here to remind you to take a deep breath, right? No school, regardless of if it's kinder, middle, or high school, is looking for a finished product of a child. They're not looking for finished products. They're looking for young people who want to grow and explore and be curious and learn well in their systems. So make sure that you are taking advantage of their admissions process, because it's not just schools accepting you, it's also your family accepting the school, right? You have to choose to apply to a school. So you don't necessarily going to apply everywhere that you start your search at. So make sure that you're being thoughtful about that. And as I mentioned, schools are looking for curious kids. They're looking for kids who want to get involved. They need a range of kids. They need a kid who might play the tuba. They need a kid who wants to do backstage theater work, make costumes. They're looking for kids who want to do photography and write for the newspaper. So whatever your child is into, or whatever you're hoping your child will explore, or what your kid is interested in pursuing, make sure that you're letting schools know that and seeing if schools have those opportunities. Schools are also considering, so this is based on application processes, right? So schools are looking for academic preparedness. What does that mean? That means, do they think that your child, with the supports that they offer, can handle the workload at the school, that it will be an appropriate workload for them, and challenging enough, but not too challenging. They're looking for curious kids who are excited and engaged. Very important. One really important thing that the admissions directors mentioned in this conversation is authenticity, right? So it's important that kids are themselves and you are yourself as you're going through this process. Overcoaching your kids, they've seen it, they know what it is. They want kids to be themselves. If your child is a little bit more shy and quiet and introverted, that's okay. If your child's a little more boisterous and outgoing, also okay, right? So allowing your child to be themselves through this process really helps schools determine if it's a right match on their side for your family. And then the last thing I love to remind families of is that this applying to private schools is an opportunity for you to brag about yourself, for your child to own their strengths. And oftentimes we look at bragging as kind of a bad word, but truly, if your child is an amazing writer or a great artist or has skills and they really want to pursue music or whatever it is, even if they're not amazing at it, but they're just so passionate about it, bring that excitement, bring that enthusiasm, and bring those strengths into the process. As far as where to begin, this was the third point they made. My clients often hear me say to keep an open mind. And they'll hear me say that over and over and over again, because oftentimes people have heard about schools from their friends or family, but this time you get to be selfish and think about your family, your child. So keeping an open mind, especially this early in the process, is key. Casting a wide net. I often encourage families to start to look at, doing research on 8 to 10 different schools, knowing that you're not going to probably apply to that many, but why not explore what's out there, right? I think it's a really valuable process to explore what's out there, cast that wide net, and see what a school might have that you don't even know about, right? There might be something great for you, for your child, for your family. Important to be honest what you're looking for. And then once you finally are able to get on the campus, the admissions directors were describing it as like treating it like a lab report. You're collecting your information, you're making your observations, you're talking to people. So remember, you are also surveying the scene to ensure that this is a place that your family belongs. It's important to be thoughtful with whom you engage, right? Don't just talk to one person at the school. You're talking to a multitude of people to collect different perspectives, current perspectives, exploring all their websites, social media, YouTube pages. And finally, and probably most importantly, is to ask all of your questions that you have for the school. If you have questions for kids, ask the kids. If you have questions for faculty, ask the hard questions. Don't ask questions you can find online. Don't ask if they have a basketball team. You can find that online. But asking questions about their culture, about their programming, about their grading system, whatever it might be, asking those questions helps to show that you're not only interested in the school, but that you care about your child. The next thing that admissions directors were talking about was inclusivity, right? Traditionally, independent schools were not known for being the most inclusive environments. And as Sean Atkins from Suffield Academy says, he said that day, he said, all schools are a work in progress. We need great students and families as partners to help navigate the times. We want kids to help push the envelope by asking tough questions. So back to asking questions, if your family belongs to an underrepresented group and you want to talk to other folks who belong to a particular group, a group that you are as part of your identity, ask to chat with folks. If you speak a different language, ask to chat with folks who speak that language. If your kid has hard questions, right? Allow them to ask them about whatever it might be, because this is how schools become better. And that sense of belonging really matters, because you're going to be there for a good amount of time, hopefully, right? And so asking about what matters to you as a family, super important, as is doing your own research. And if you look up a school and you see that there's some sort of a news story that made some headlines, do ask about that, but also know that schools that have had that experience have had to dig deep to regain the trust of their community, and they're often the ones who are doing the most work to regain that trust, to establish better supports for their students, to establish better communications with families. So know that, and really think, like, how do you feel there? And the last point I'm going to make tonight before we ask any questions is thinking about buzzwords. So you will be hearing buzzwords thrown around during your educational search, and these change over time, but some of the ones you're probably going to hear are academic rigor, academic excellence, hands-on learning, community, diversity. It's an innovative school. We have social emotional learning. So as you hear these from schools, if you're hearing these buzzwords, it's important that you're asking what they mean to the school, asking for further clarification. But here's a general idea of what some of these buzzwords mean, right? So when you hear the word rigor, know that all academic programs can be challenging, right? So it's important to think, what does your student need right now? Does your student need a place that's super academically competitive, that's based on grades? Is that how they thrive? Or do you need somewhere that's maybe a different kind of support, like a whole child, where they're thinking of the social, emotional, and the academics of the child, right? So thinking about your kid, what do they need right now? And then also figuring out what supports are available, because all kids hopefully learn how to self-advocate and ask for what they need. And so are there, office hours? What kinds of supports are there for your kid, whatever those supports might mean. Another buzzword you'll hear is community, right? So it's important as you're thinking about community to think about, the people at the school, the sense of belonging that they create at the school, and also that it's a safe place to try new things, right? If that's important to you, if you want your kid to go try an instrument or try a sport, is that a possibility for your child there? Also, as we think about diversity, asking schools what they mean by this. Oftentimes schools will have different statistics on their website about racial and ethnic diversity, about different family structures, about socioeconomic diversity, how many families are receiving tuition assistance. But it's important that you're talking to families who share part of your identity with you as you are applying to the school, to hear some of their perspectives. And then finally, SEL is social emotional learning. So especially after COVID and all that kids have and families have been through in these last couple of years, a lot of schools are putting different programs into place to support students' well-being, not just their academics, but their state of mind, right? Helping them with anxiety, depression, building community, remembering how to make friends, all of these things. So what kinds of supports are there for families like this? So hopefully you found this helpful this evening, and it's my honor to share this with you. And if you are at all interested in pursuing more questions with me, if you have questions about schools, if you're looking for someone to help you find your child's next step of their educational journey, I would love to help you with that process. You're welcome to schedule an inquiry call with me at my website right there. If you are driving, as this video was listening to, it's going to also be on YouTube, so you can find me there. Please like and subscribe. And if you do decide to schedule a call with me, we'll just have a 30-minute chat to talk about your family, see what your goals are, and see if those are some needs that I'm able to deliver for you. So thank you so much for coming. I'm going to